So after a fair bit of boat content, let's get back to some electronics and some batteries. So I'm back home for a relatively narrow period of time, and I have a couple of specific things I want to get done. I think I can now get two 2P4S, so 560 amp hour per battery, onto the boat, removing all 4 gel batteries. Well, maybe not all of them. I might keep one. And yes, everything here is a mess. The boat's taken up all of my time, so I'm not really putting any time into... I have no pride. What can I say? So the first thing I'm going to do is pull apart both of these batteries and take these two and turn them into one. One of the things I'm nervous about is that I don't think I have enough flexible bus bars to do... Why am I speaking slow again? I don't know if I've got enough flexible bus bars to do 2 of these batteries. I know I had enough when I had it in a single 48 volt configuration, but here I have to figure out how to join 2 and P. I've never done a 2P configuration before. I should remind folks that this is temporary. It's for one trip. It's for the trip home. Actually, let me start talking about that while I pull this apart. Speaking to Tim, Lady K, Tim and others in the Discord have done the Erie Canal, some of them a couple of times. I think Tim's done it twice himself. And one of the key things they were saying to me is that when the mast is out of the sailboat, it moves very weirdly and uncomfortably. Because of that, they very strongly recommended that I don't go into Lake Ontario at Oswego, and that instead they recommended that I stay on the Erie Canal all the way to Lake Erie, right by Niagara Falls. You pop out Lake Erie and then you take the Welland Canal. You take the Welland Canal up to Lake Ontario, and at that point I am a hop, skip, and a jump from Hamilton, where I'm taking my boat. Got a phone call and did a wardrobe change. What was I saying? I can't remember what I was saying. Yay, phone calls and easily distracted. Squirrel! So taking the Erie Canal means that I'm now looking at, I think it's 761 nautical miles, which I had given myself an extra week or so, figuring the boat would break down or something like that, and that just burned up a lot of the buffer I had planned. So yeah, I have to make a few adjustments to my plans. So be it. So that's one of the news. So that's one part of the news. The other part of the news is that while I was at the boat, I spent a fair bit of time sitting in the lazarette, as you saw, but I did some off camera, just sitting there and thinking and considering where the batteries would go. One of the things that I've been worried about since I bought the boat is if I was going to have to stack the batteries. Originally the plan was to have 3 along the bottom facing forward. When you open the engine bay hatch, it's got the doors in it, you'd see the V-drive transmission and the engine. I was going to have 3 batteries side by side, 2 deep. And one of the worries I had was that I would have to load those in through the lazarette. So any along the bottom would be a pain to work on, but also the ones towards port side would also be a pain to work on, and it's really bothered me. After I left the boat, I went and spent 5-6 days at Acorn de Arabella helping out Steve. One of the guys there, Satchel. Hi, Satchel. I don't know if you watch this, but if you do, hi. He is an actual naval architect, and he was talking to me about my designs and my plans, and he was really concerned about the weight distribution of the batteries, putting so much weight aft. His concern is that the boat is not going to handle well with so much weight in the back, especially now that I'm keeping the diesel tank, which means I am most likely going to move at least 2 of the batteries to the center line of the ship where the settees are. If you recall, I got water tanks under both my settees, which was one of the things I really liked about the boat. It had a lot of water capacity. The V-berth tank is by far the one that has the most volume, and I still want to have settee tanks in case the V-berth is ever contaminated, to give me a little bit of a buffer. Though I am still planning to have a water maker, which takes a lot of the stress off. But either way, I still want to have tanks under the settee. So I need to figure out, can I cut up the tanks that I have and just plastic weld a cap on them to shorten them up to make space for the batteries? Do I need to have new tanks made? Problems to be solved next summer when I'm doing work on the boat. Point is, I think I can now do 4 batteries sitting where the engine is currently, with the front facing the lazarette on the starboard side, which means if I had a problem with any of those 4 batteries, I could get in through the lazarette, pop it open, and do work on it. And I wouldn't be trying to shift other batteries out of the way. This introduces some concerns that I was trying to avoid, like, why am I talking and not working? The cable lengths are going to be different. I mean, arguably, you're going to have differences in every wire you make. How close can you really get them, and how what's the border of Britain, I think is the old thing. What level of accuracy do you want to get to? So the wires going to the batteries that will be in the settees, yeah, that's right, there's two of them. Setai, what's the plural of settees? They will have longer runs going back to their bus bars than the 4 that are in the engine bay. If I was drawing on the batteries constantly, I could see the point where, because of the higher resistance, the 2 batteries under the settees will get drawn less than the 4 batteries in the engine bay. I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal, and even if it is, I can adapt and manage. I mean, I could always replace the wires to make sure that the ones in the engine bay are artificially longer so they match the ones in the settees. It's a solvable problem is what I'm getting at. So yeah, the battery layout has changed. Again, maybe for the last time. I won't know exactly how this is going to work until I get the boat home and I can take those water tanks out. It also means I have to pull apart my settees, which makes me a little bit sad, but what can you do? If I had moved the extra batteries forward, I could end up in something called hobby horsing, where I have a lot of weight in the front and back, and I get into this forward and back rocking motion, which is apparently not good either. I mean, not apparently, it makes a lot of sense, it's not good. I'm gonna unplug this, which now guarantees that this is completely dead, because these things are now going to be swinging in the wind as I try to make space. BMS 1 out of the way, BMS 2 out of the way. Someday the boat's going to be finished and I won't have wires and tools everywhere. And I think when that day finally comes, I'm going to celebrate and then immediately feel very lost. So let's think about batteries for a minute and then I'll keep talking about the boat. So I need to make them into like a stick configuration. Actually, I might as well keep them like this. Actually, I have a question. With the 2mm neoprene, they do fit. I might have an experiment in mind. Some of you already know where this is going. Not because I've told anyone, because you're clever. This was main pack positive, main pack negative. So if I'm gonna do that, oh right, where the foam was from the original configuration dictated sort of which go where. Oh, I've got my stickers I made. Oh, the stickers are gonna have to change. Such a shame. Okay, so negative, negative, positive, positive, negative, and then swap these two and I should be golden. For those of you who might not have watched the original build, the first 48-volt battery I did, I used this 2mm neoprene, I guess it is, to buffer everything. And all that side is got the neoprene. I need to buy some more neoprene and then I can finish up this side and the outer side here. But anyways, so now the trick is, how do I wire these up to make them into a 2P bank? Okay, so that makes this. So now that's a single 560 amp hour battery. So I need to do the same thing here and here. That's 560 amps. That's 560 amps. And already I've used up all of them I was using for my previous design. That, and then that. Oops, and these ones push out. Let me crunch those. Now, I have all of these that I use these to create the series connections, because these, nothing says I have to go from here. I don't have to go from here to here. There's nothing wrong with going from here to here. If I do that, that connects the negative to the positive. I need my multimeter so I can validate what I'm doing. If I go from here to here, I should see 7 volts. Wait, I see nothing. Wait a second, what am I doing wrong here? That's main pack negative, so positive has got a link to negative. I was just connecting on the wrong side, I think. Positive to negative. I mean, this is simple. Why am I struggling with this? Okay, so now I'm going negative to positive. Oh, and there's my 6.6 volts. And then if I go negative to positive, positive to negative, negative to positive, positive to negative. So now here, I should see 9.9 volts. There's my 9.9. And then the last one is to connect here to here. Now I should see my 9 plus 3.3 is 12 point something. I'm bad at math. So that's main pack negative to main pack positive. There's my 13.2 volts. Okay, so that is a viable configuration and I needed 8. How many of these do I have left? I don't think I've got 8 left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 shillings. I'm short by 2. Well, that's okay. I have enough crimps that I can actually make 2 more. That'll use up, I have 5 of these left. I could make 2 more of these if I can't find any. So here's my idea. Earlier on in this channel, I spent a lot of time pontificating about what was better. Should I use rigid or flexible bus bars? And what kind of flexible bus bars should I use? It strikes me that because this trip home is going to be 3 weeks, one trip, 761 nautical miles. Some of it's going to be kind of heavy going up the Atlantic Ocean, down the Delaware Bay, and then a lot of it's going to be relatively quiet, hopefully, going up the Hudson River and through the Erie Canal. What if I built one battery with flexible bus bars and one battery with rigid bus bars, and then see at the end of the voyage if I can notice any difference in how tight the connections are at the end of that trip? Part of me just wants to use flexible for the whole thing because, you know, I don't want to think that I made a wrong choice. But hey, let's find out. Yes, this is what I'm going to do. I am going to make this battery out of flexible bus bars and my other battery out of rigid bus bars, and we'll see how they behave on the trip home. Okay, so obviously right now, first, I just want to assemble a battery. Actually, no, I don't need to assemble a battery. I need to build boxes. So if you recall, one battery, I'll see if I can find a shot to put in here, is going to go where the two gel batteries were under the quarter berth. That's where I was testing the Multi-Plus Compact. That one has a lot of width at the back. Oh, you know what? I took measurements and I wrote them down. I need to go find that. I'll be right back. So I need to make a pair of boxes. And given that this is just for one trip, I'm probably just going to use plywood. Obviously, that would be a horrible idea for anything that was meant to last for any length of time. Where did I write those measurements down? I'm really bad at keeping... I know I wrote this down. Oh, come on now. I know I wrote down the measurements. Oh, what did I do with these measurements? Okay, I'll bring you back when I find them. All right, I looked everywhere. I can't find the measurements, but what I decided to do was, thankfully, I don't know why I included this in that video, but when I was playing with the used Victron I found, I held up the battery at one point and I said, it's a, what was it, Dakota Dominator. I had taken a picture of the label, so I had the model number. So with that, I was able to get their dimensions, and those batteries were 329mm by 171mm by 238mm. And the key thing on the engine side, where the starter battery and the third gel is, it's big and there's lots of space, so I'm not too worried about that one. But under the quarter berth, at the aft end, it pinches up because the hull's coming up like this and there's very little space. So that's kind of my limiter. So with all of that said, now what I need to do is figure out how big my box is going to be. And I'm looking at 177 for the batteries itself, which is wider than the batteries. And that's before I put the boards in. Okay, well, the length is 329. So hopefully this is less than 329. Oh wait, 329 times 2. So each of the old gel batteries was 329mm wide. So it'd be 660 for the two of them side by side. And that was pretty much all of it, which gets me to here. So I've got this much space to work with. That's useful to me because I can back this up. As the further forward I can get the battery, the more width I have to work with. What's the height difference? I'm looking at 225, and the height for this thing was 238. This is going to be a lot tighter than I thought. Shillings. So these batteries by themselves would fit. The problem is the batteries aren't going to be on their own. I need to put a box around them. And I'm looking at using 1/2 inch plywood. So an inch of plywood is an extra 25mm. I need to do some drawing. I'll be right back. I brought you back because I've been sitting here doing the measurements and I realize I have a conundrum. Even though the battery is going to be brought forward, that's going to buy me some width here. I don't know by how much. And the problem I had with how I wired this up initially was that the positive was going to be on this side. If I make the battery a rectangle, I have to add about 48, let's say 50mm, 2 inches, to the total width. I don't want to spend forever building a box for this because the whole point is this is just a one-trip battery. But I might have to make sort of an L shape where I can cut this corner piece out so that I can move this switch further forward. I can buy myself a little bit of space by having this on the inside battery or on the forward battery and then haul this over a certain amount. I really hate fighting for every millimeter when I don't have the real measurements. I can bring the switch realistically forward 3 cells. By here, I'm sure it's going to be okay. Oh, this is going to be an annoying build. Not because it's difficult, but because it's going to be time consuming. So I'm going to have to make kind of like a nook here in the back of the battery has to be carved out, which means I have to have a board like this, and then a board like this. And the top and the bottom have to have similar shapes, but it's really not that big of a deal. The amount of time I'm stressing over it is more time than it would take me to build that shape. The other thing I was thinking is, If I bring the main pack positive over to here, basically turn everything around, and I make the main pack negative back here, that might work. You know what? I'm going to try that. Positive to negative, negative to positive. Okay, so I'm going to spin this around to let me get this as forward as I can. That'll sit like that. The other thing I have to worry about as well, if you saw the previous video, I don't know if I really showed a good clip of it, but the hole that goes through the bulkhead from the quarter berth storage area to the engine bay is right about here. So I'm probably going to bring the wires out here or somewhere in this area so that I can swing them around. Now it's important to note, because I know someone's going to bring it up, I am used to dealing with amperages in the 48 volt regime, and the same loads in 12 volt are going to be 4 times the amperage. If this was a long-term install, these battery wires would definitely be too small. 200 amps at 12 volts is 50 amps at 48 volts, or you could say it the other way around. But the highest load I have in the boat that I could imagine myself actually running is the hot water heater. So for the trip home, there's not going to be any high loads. It's probably not up to code, or ABYC, but anyways. If I do this, and I do this, and I put the screen, if I put the screen like this, I'm not going to be able to see it. Yeah, I can see it if I stick my head into the quarter berth access hatch. And then I need to bring the wires out. If I bring them out the front here, I don't want to put grommets on these. I can't put grommets on these like I did with the first box build, because I would have to cut these ends off and run the grommets over and then close them back up. And obviously I don't want to do that for this trip. So what I can do is just notch out the top of the box and run the wires out there. Yeah, I think that's what I will do. Okay, let's actually bolt this together and make it a battery. And then when it's all together, I'm going to take some more measurements. You've seen me do this 100 times. Oh, after so much time working on the engine, it's kind of nice to be back on the battery. Okay, let's check the voltages here. I know you've seen me do this a bunch of times, but if the kids don't get too noisy, I'll include this because it's always good to keep checking and don't get lazy. 3.3, 6.6, 9.2, 13.2, 13.2. So that's wired up properly. Positive, positive, negative, negative, positive, positive, negative, negative. Positives are joined, negatives are joined. Negatives are joined, positives are joined. Positives are joined, negatives are joined, negatives are joined, positives are joined. Brick, 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 brick. I don't know if brick's the right term. Cell pair. Cell pair negative to cell pair positive. Cell pair negative to cell pair positive, cell pair negative to cell pair positive, main pack negative, main pack positive. I think we're back in business. I was originally talking about going to fiberglass and make fiberglass boxes for my batteries. I'm starting to think I'm going to actually use white oak and make wood boxes. Fiberglass would last longer, but I kind of fancy myself an amateur woodworker. I think it would be nice to make the battery boxes. It's a quite rot resistant wood, so it seems appropriate for boats. Whatever I do for this battery, I'm going to do in mirror for the other battery. So you imagine this is the aft of the boat and this is the quarter berth. So this is the bow of the boat. I'm putting the accessories on this side. On the other side of the bulkhead, the engine is on that side. So the switch and the screen will be inverted and facing out that way. Oh, the switch is off. Why do I have... Right, I wired it so that I had power even when the switch was off, which means I really need to put a fuse in this. That is something I need to do right away. We've learned that lesson the hard way. Shall we turn on the BMS? Before I turn the battery on, I want to anchor these down just so that they're not flopping in the breeze. So those can't hurt anything anymore. So let's turn on the BMS. Temperature minus 200 Celsius. Right, I forgot to plug in the temperature sensors. Where's the temperature? There's the temperature sensor. There we go. Okay, now the temperature is reading 21°C. So I need to go into settings. Cell count is still 4, but now we change this to 560 amps. This one battery, all 3 of the gel batteries on my boat currently are 95 amps each. So what is that? 285 amp hours, and you can only use half of it, so 140 usable amp hours, and this is 560, and I'm gonna have 2 of them. I love lithium iron phosphate so much. Oh my God. Okay, so that's set to 560. All the other settings were as before, so they should be fine. Go back to status. And of course, it has no idea what the state of charge is because I haven't done a full charge and sync. One of the things about a 2P4S, whenever you have multiple parallel cells, is that, and it's one of the reasons I avoided it in the past, these two cells are one cell from the perspective of the BMS. If one is sagging out below the other, it's not really going to know. The voltage will always balance out because they're in parallel. So if one of the subcells gets to be a higher or lower voltage, it's just simply going to draw from the high cell into the low cell until equilibrium is hit. So you lose some granularity of your view into the cells when you build a battery like this, but I'm not that worried. I really am not. I'm surprised how quickly this went together, and I really like how this worked. And I love the fact that I can actually put to use some of these old cables I built. This is lovely. Okay, so I think we have the design for the new batteries. So this is the box I'm drawing right here is the cells. The panels for the box are going to be outside of it. If you remember from the last video where the hard interface control panel is, I could have mounted these two right there and run the wires back. I would have to lengthen this, but that's no big deal. I could do that on the boat. I would have to lengthen this. Same, big deal. I could do that on the boat and I could run it out here. Do I want to not build this into the box and run this all the way up there? Because I have a lot of length to do that. I think I might, you know. That would be really cool. I have lots of the little ring terminals, so I can re-terminate them. That's no problem. I mean, hell, I could save the ring terminals and just cut them and extend them. It's not like it takes a lot of voltage. And then I could put the little switches for turning the screens on and off right there as well. And I can do that with door skin while I'm on the boat on my next trip. Okay, so that solves that problem. That puts the actual main battery. Oh, that's beautiful. Why didn't I think of that sooner? Okay, so that's done. Okay, that's the plan for the box. I said before that I was going to build the second one so that I didn't transpose anything in mirroring. I'm pretty comfortable I can do this. So I'm not going to build the second one right now. Why are you not turning off? You gonna stay off this time? I'm going to pull the wire anyway. Charge is on, just turned right back on again. JK, why are you so difficult? Okay, I'll turn it off after. Before I call it a night, I wanted to talk about a new toy I got. So I was speaking to the folks on the Lady K Discord about my concern of charging the lithium batteries off of the alternator. The typical way you deal with that is you get a alternator regulator like the Wakespeed WS500, which is really expensive. And I was kind of bemoaning the fact that I didn't want to spend that much money. And I was kind of getting a bit desperate, and I said, you know, I think what I'm going to do is if I need to turn off charging, I would just kill the engine. I'd have like a main switch that I could just disconnect the battery from the alternator and then restart the engine. And when it's charging, if it hits like 80–90% state of charge, stop charging it off the alternator. This only works if you can trust the fact that the batteries won't disconnect for some other reason. So it was definitely gambling with my alternator. And for a 3-week trip, I mean, I was like, okay, well, what happens if I blow up my alternator? Okay, I just have to charge off the shore power. And it was a little bit risque, shall we say. So one of them said, why don't you just get a DC-DC charger? And I was like, well, when I was looking at the Victron stuff, it was hundreds of dollars, and I had a really hard time spending that kind of money on something that was just going to have to work for one trip. And somebody pointed me to this Renogy unit. I'm going to have a lot of stuff to sell when I get home. And of course, this is not sponsored. So what this is the Renogy 40 amp DC-DC charger. The idea behind this is I'm going to leave one of the lead acids on, or one of the gel batteries on the boat. I'll have to relocate it because where it currently is now is going to be taken up by one of the 2 batteries, but that's fine. I can find another home for it, probably just at the back of the lazarette. I'll figure something out. Point is, the alternator will still go to the gel battery, and the gel battery will be used for starting the diesel. Though I am really curious, can you start a diesel off of lithium iron phosphate? I am so sure that I can, that I'm almost willing to take a chance, but that's another topic. Getting back to the question at hand. So what you do is you take the input and you connect it to the starter gel battery, and this can be set so that it only starts charging when the engine's running. It's got a little DC switch. I've got to figure out how to set all that up. As you saw, I just opened it. But then what it'll do is you can either set it to run at half or full, so 20 amp or 40 amp, it will then charge, or the lithium iron phosphate batteries. It understands LFP batteries. So it acts as an in-between between the alternator gel battery and the lithium iron phosphate batteries. At 40 amps, at 12 volts, I think it's like 500 watt hours. Let's actually do the numbers. This thing here at 40 amps, that's 12.8 volts roughly, times 40 amps is 512 watts. Let's round that down to 500 watts. And if I'm running 8 hours a day, that's 4 kilowatts. That should be more than enough to allow me to keep my batteries charged up. To run the hot water tank for an hour would be like 3 full drain, heat cycles, which would be a shower for each of us after the engine's off. That's going to be 1,250 watt hours, say 1,500 watt hours to round it up. That's nothing for this. And if I find that the alternator is getting too hot, I can cut this in half, run it at 20 amps, and that's still 2 kilowatt hours. I'm not going to have solar. This is what made me decide not to have solar, and I really didn't, just because I got so little time left to try to figure out where I would mount the solar panels I have, how would I get them down there because they're so big, where would I fit them in the car, etc., etc. I think this was like 180 bucks shipped Canadian. It was hard to say no, and it'll be brand new. When I get home I can sell it. I'm not going to be able to set this up yet, but I wanted to talk about it briefly because it'll be going to the boat when I go to the boat. Before I call it a day, I got some other things I want to play with. So, I had a problem develop. Oh god, I'm going broke in a hurry. So, before I left the boat, and I haven't talked about this in the video because it happened like the day before I left, my fridge stopped working. I went to pour myself an adult beverage and my ice was in the wrong phase. The problem I had was that the switch that turns the compressor on and off based on the temperature of the freezing element had snapped. This isn't the exact same switch, it was the closest I could find, and we expect from a 42-year-old fridge. So the way these switches work is, this is literally just in, out. Close this switch, compressor comes on. Open the switch, compressor turns off. I knew that this was the problem because I took the spades off this, shorted them, and went to my breaker, and I was able to turn the compressor on and off manually with the breaker, which got me through my last day or two to get home. So this little switch should solve my problem for the trip home. In any case, I'm done for tonight, but for you, all right. In a particularly disheveled state, I'm back. For you, that was just a second. For me, that was a few days. Trying to build these boxes was a little bit harder than I thought, mostly just because of stuff that's happening around in life. Let me show you the boxes that I've made. Actually, this is ticking again, isn't it? So I've got 2 of these boxes. You can see there's the disconnect switch, and I've got a little slot for the wires. I know they're construction grade plywood. They are not going to last. As soon as the boat is home, I'm done. That's it. They're out. Before I get started, you'll notice these are mirror images. This one is going to go in the quarter berth like this. This one's going to go in the engine bay like this. And this will be the divider wall. So this one's only accessible through the quarter berth, but the wire's going to come out here and go through a hole into the engine bay. So I'm going to set one aside. Let's start assembling what's going to be the quarter berth. What I did, let me show you. This is kind of shameful woodworking, but actually, you can see that better than I can. I used a drill bit in the drill press and I just sort of cut it out. Oh, the name of those bits is going to come to me. I was thinking of just cutting this out as a square and putting some door skin on it. I didn't want anything to catch on it. I didn't want to have a bump. It was just another step. So I relieved the back area until the back would fit in. And with that, it also meant I could shorten up the box a bit. Oh, why is it not fitting now? Okay, I tested this before I did there we go. So I had to leave 50 millimeters from here. Because I was digging into this sidewall, I could actually make this shorter, which meant I could make the whole box shorter and save me just a few more millimeter. Oh, hey Kepler. I had to get new bolts. I'm gonna have to cut them down. The reason I'm doing this first is because I have to actually physically cut these bolts. If I just put them in, they would stick in and hit the side of the batteries. Professional studio, this is not. All right. I only need one to get the size right, and then I can use that as a template to cut the others. The Sharpie isn't getting all the way in, so if I cut so the blue is entirely removed, that'll be good. Can you see? I can't tell by the viewfinder if you can see the blue mark. Now I need to run downstairs and cut 8 of these to that length. There, 8 shortened bolts. Oh, I was gonna put the wires on and then put this in, but I don't think I could do that. Yeah, I'm gonna have to put them on in situ. Okay, so these 2 go on this side. Remember, I don't want these pinched in too much. Remember that causing me problems before. Really hard to keep the wires in place with it in the box. Okay, will this close? Yes, that will close. That should reach over to positive. Okay, let's start putting bolts in. I'll make sure I got an extra unga-dunga on these. I haven't actually dropped a cell in to see if this is going to fit yet. I suppose I can actually do that fairly easily now. Okay, does it fit? Oh my gosh. I do not have a millimeter to spare. Okay, that was close, but it's good. For those of you who've been around for a while or went back and watched my original videos, you'll recall that I don't always have a perfect track record of succeeding on these boxes on my first try. I still have to make sure that the cells can fit in this width, but that's one dimension sorted. Oh, with so little to spare, these bolts still stick out a bit too much. Fuck. Am I gonna have to go and cut them again? Yeah, I am. I have to do all that over again. I wonder if I have washers. I know you can't really see this. Oh, you can't see shit. If I do that, if I can get a washer in there, take up the space, that'll save me cutting these bolts. Well, I mean, I should just do it the right way. Ah, damn it. The reason that is too long, pardon the shadows, that's the problem. I have to cut these up shorter. Bun of a sedge. So I went downstairs to cut the bolts short and got distracted by something shiny, and before I knew it, I was at the salon. I got my hair done. Anyways, back to this. I'll show you what I did. I couldn't really get the Dremel in there or the hacksaw in there, so I just took a raw blade and cut it by hand, and then I used the stone bit, I don't know what you call it, on the Dremel just to smooth this over so there's no sharp edges that could cut into the batteries. So those are done. Let's start putting the batteries in. So that's BMS 2. Oh, I forgot. I found a pack of these as well. These probably won't make any difference on the boat, but between now and getting down to the boat, they'll help save my floor. Obviously, I'm not strong enough to lift these things myself, to get them into the car, to get them out of the car, to get them into the boat. So the top, I'll just be screwing down. And that way, when I get ready to head down to the boat, I can just take the batteries out, put the boxes into place, and then assemble the batteries right in place. Positive, positive. Negative, negative. Trying to find a positive that doesn't have padding on the on that side, and I think all of these do. I might just have to start peeling some of the. Well, yeah. I don't think there's enough length for me to be able to fit all of the batteries in if I allow two pieces of foam to touch each other. Here's an experiment. Can I get this off without tearing it all to pieces? Yeah, that's not going to work. Not going to work easily, but. Oh. Okay, well that got most of it. I'm sure there's some clever way to get this off. I don't know what it is. Normally this is where I'd get a knife or a scraper or something, but obviously that probably wouldn't be the wisest idea on a battery. Okay, there's got to be a better way to do this. It'd be a bad idea to use a blade, she said. 1 minute before reaching for a blade. Doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be flat enough. For the purposes of getting home, I'm going to call that good enough. Positive. It's interesting, the bottom seems to come off relatively easily, but when I get towards the top, that's where it seems to really stick. Alright, ugly as sin, but does the job. Okay, so plus, plus, negative, and here's the test. Foam against foam again. Let me see if I have enough wiggle room here. Nope, definitely not. I need to cut some of that off. Oh, this one's going to be a pain in the ass, isn't it? Oh, that's exactly what I was worried about. Cut the insulation off. Gotta be a better way to get this stuff off. In hindsight, I think I don't like this foam. I was thinking of buying some to put on the 48-volt batteries. I don't think I will. All right, that's enough. Actually, I've always heard how the case was negative, but I've never actually screwed up properly to expose it to test. So let's find out together. Positive to shell. I'm getting no voltage. Negative. Oh, the shell is positive. Ho, ho, ho. Okay, well, there you go. Now we know. I definitely want to go and cover that up. Why would the shell be positive? That seems weird. I'm sure the manufacturers have a good reason for it. Now, where is my tape? All right. It'd be easier to do. Oh, this is tight. It's in. I did not have anything to spare. That was close. I seem to have lost most of the nuts for the batteries. Lovely. So if you recall, I'm going to do some science on this trip home. We're going to try the metal bus bars on one pack, and we're going to do the flexible bus bars on the other pack. And I'm going to mark where the bolts are, and I'll see if any have backed off on the trip home. Positive, negative, negative to positive. Positive to negative, negative to positive. Positive, negative, negative to positive. Let's check to see if we've got a 12-volt battery. Yep, we do. Ah, right, this is coming out because I'm putting the screens outside of the batteries and the switches and all of this stuff. Okay. Oh, right, I have to lengthen these now. The screen's negative cable now has to be extended to match the length of this cable. Oh, the positive needs to be extended as well. I have to remember, this is for one trip. It's not a long-term solution. I don't need to make this perfect. I just need to make this work. This is going to be on the main pack negative. Throw a bolt on it just to anchor it. It's important to remember that if this fails, I lose my screen. It's not the end of the world. Ah! Did that come across on camera? I won't know until I edit if that came across on camera, but I was holding the positive wire, which I had just exposed, and it was touching this when I tried to strip the positive. Let's do these one at a time. I think that's the right way to do this. Some days I just don't feel like I'm really with it. Today is one of those days. That feels like a good idea. So I've mentioned in past about how I like to do this sort of fan and twist thing. Can you see how the wires are fanned? Do that to sort of interlace them and then twist. This is obviously all very rough. I'm just trying to get the length of the wires I need. Okay, that will do it right there. Don't cut both of them at once because they're both connected to the battery. 1 and 2. Obviously, all this is going to have to be cleaned up. It's a bit of a rat's nest of wiring, but it's done. Oh, this is not my finest hour. Okay, well, put that mess over there. Let's get back to assembling the battery. I should learn my lesson and tape my ends. There. Let's say I don't learn my lesson, even if it takes 5 or 6 oopses before I finally do. Main pack negative. Battery 1 positive. Battery 2 positive. I think I'm still short some bolts. Yeah, I still need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 nuts. I'm gonna have to run to the hardware store. This is annoying. I'll be right back. Earlier I had bought some of these Posi-Lock nuts. I found them and I was 1 short. So I went to the store and got 10 more. So now this is gonna double as a second experiment. So on these 8, it's going to be the standard nuts that came with the batteries. On these, it's going to be an M6 washer and an M6 Posi-Lock bolt. Nut, sorry. And that has a little, I think it's a piece of acrylic washer or something built in that bites onto the thread and makes it a lot harder to back off. So the vibration, in theory, should be less likely to have this thing come loose. So this is BMS 1 battery 3, positive. Should be this one. And the last 2 are BMS 1 positive. Use a voltmeter to check this as always. There we go. 3, 6, 10, 13, 13. Okay, this is wired properly. Okay, this is not to my usual standard, but so be it. I'm really running short of time. Perfect? Absolutely not. Good enough? A qualified yes. So the next thing now is to bring these wires down and through here, hoping I can run the 2 small wires in that gap between the top and bottom wire. Okay, that's not enough. All right, I have to carve this out some more. I didn't do the best job cutting that straight. If I cut that flush, that's probably going to be enough space for these 3 wires to drop in. Alright, let's see if that bought me enough space. Yes, that'll fit. There you go. I'll trim this down to fit this one and make another one for the other battery, but that's it right there. That's the engine bay battery. Now, let's see if it works. 13.3 volts. Now, I'm gonna have to go into the BMS. 13.32, it's reading 13.30 on the screen and 13.31 in the app. It's flicking between 1 and 2, and I know this is off by a little bit, so I'm gonna call that good enough. Save for finishing up the lid. That's the first battery finished. Obviously, I have to clean up these wires. I'll have to figure out how I'm gonna do that. I've got some cable lacing. I suppose I could lace it. That might be what I do, but if I do that, I'm gonna do it later. So for now, I can push this battery out of the way. Oh, and being that it has feet now, it's a lot easier to move this out of the way. Oh, it's nice to be finally making progress. $13.20, close enough. Okay, so now the next thing is to start actually connecting this to the Multi-Plus Compact, setting up the Renogy DC-DC charger, and I have to decide whether, now that I've got the Compact, I don't really need this DC charger anymore. But as I saw last time on the boat, having that really old Sentry unit got me out of a pickle. But I might as well use it for the trip home as a backup 12-volt charger in case the Compact for some reason kicks out on me. Obviously, if that happens, I'll lose my inverter, but at least I can still keep things powered up on the 12-volt side of things. Yeah, I'm gonna take this with me. So the Quattro, the Compact, and the Renogy still need to be set up. That's enough work, though. I'm gonna make that another video. So that's gonna be the end of this video. As I record this, it is April 1st. I have not even 6 weeks until I have to slip the lines and head home. Oh boy. So I'm the Digital Mermaid, and I'll see you all next time. Bye. So it's been a long time since I've done cable lacing, so you're gonna have to bear with me as I try to remember how to do it myself. The guide that I follow, it's based on the NASA standard 8739.4a. I kind of modify how they do it. I like how they do the starting and end locking knots. The way they do the running stitch, they just do a simple hook like this. I like to loop it and knot it.